Hello and welcome back to Coven. This is season 4, episode 5. I think the episodes have been switched around this season, but we are back with Mauricio Garcia, the animistic perfumer of Herbcraft Perfumery and also of Planets Perfumery, which is the fragrance line that the three of us founded that had its soft launch on May 22nd, which is so exciting. So this is a special episode where we're going to be doing a deep dive into each of the 3 planets that are the fragrances that we developed. So we have Mars, Venus, and Mercury, and we're going to tell you about our associations with the archetypes and with the planets and the energies and the mythologies. And we're going to talk about the fragrances and what we wanted with the fragrances and how we developed them and what Mauricio, all of the magic that Mauricio poured into each of them. So
Yay!
do you guys have a magic moment? I didn't really warn you, but anybody have a magic moment to share?
I mean, I felt like I had a magic moment just hanging out with all of you on the 22nd. That was magical. Having us all in one place.
Yeah,
for sure. There was a moment where, we were there at the soft launch party, and we had the dim lighting and the perfumes all lined up with their luscious herbs and greenery and fruits, and it was like this very interstitial feeling. I don't know, like we were in a very twilight space and in between space. So it just was, yeah, like you said, a magic moment.
yeah, it was so magical. That was the most magical day of the year so far for me. It was perfect. It was in a bookstore at Booksmith on Haight Street here in San Francisco. And as Mauricio pointed out, it was very mercurial feeling. It was just like a portal in between worlds, and it was attached to a bar that everybody could go in called the Alembic that had these magical drink cocktail pairings. It was so wonderful. So yeah, that's my magic moment too.
Special.
I agree. Well, we had the idea before turning on record for this episode to check out the birth chart for Planets Perfumery because we haven't really looked at it in depth. I mean, we definitely picked the day intentionally because it was a Uranus Kazemi, but we haven't done a deep dive into the chart. So do you guys want to do a deep dive into Planets Perfumery's chart?
Yes, I can't wait.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen. All right. So here is the chart for Planets Perfumery's birth. This is our birth chart. As you can see, we're a Scorpio rising, a Scorpio ascendant, just barely 29 degrees. I did this based on the time that the event started on the day. There is that Uranus Kazemi, so Uranus conjunct the sun in Gemini, Moon in Leo, which is expressive. You have Lilith in Sagittarius, who's almost rising. She's very near the ascendant. We have Mercury in Gemini as well, close to the sun in Uranus. We have a Venus and Jupiter in Cancer with the vertex. We have a Mars conjunct Chiron in Taurus with Chiron in Aries. Yeah.
I also like that our lot of fortune is in Aquarius.
True. Yeah. Close to the North Node also in Pisces. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Okay, who wants to go first?
What were you going to say, Mauricio, earlier about the midheaven being in Virgo? It sounded like you got excited.
Oh, it just is. It's so close to the sun like that. It's giving like high priestess energy. She's just kind of like, walked up to the temple at the top of the mountain, and like the goddess has descended, the moon descended, she drew down the moon, so it just feels very cool. That's kind of what I was seeing.
I also think that how you talk about perfumery as like this passed down like ancient work of like ancient high priestesses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's the midheaven is in Virgo, which you always, you associate with the high priestesses, and it's conjunct the South Node, or it's very close to the South Node, which feels like the passed down, like kind of
Yeah,
lineage work.
totally.
It's also
Absolutely. It
right
is
there
the
with the moon.
it's a pathway of tradition. And like one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, like comparatively, is that kind of very new Mars in Taurus. So we kind of like in our last video talked about how I consider Taurus to be like the materialization of spirit. So it's just is a really interesting. Um, it's interesting, and it will become more so when you hear us talk about Mars and how it's just kind of a very new, I guess, way of thinking of fragrance, or exists within this kind of new way that we're making perfume. I guess is how I should
Yeah.
say. So
Yeah, and the Uranus Kazemi felt really potent to me because it's like it feels like a sort of revolutionary way, like the fragrance world seems to be going through this revolution,
absolutely,
um, this evolution, and yeah, Mauricio knows a lot more about that than I do, but it seems like there's this huge push toward like independent perfumery and artistic, like artisanal perfumers and um perfume as like this more expressive and eccentric art form, and I think ours is definitely aligned with that.
yeah, for sure. And then we have like the Mercury so close, so it's almost like a literal representation of not only our choice to like communicate these things, but almost like a charge to like communicate what's being
Yeah,
communicated to us.
and the fact that it was in a bookstore for the soft
For,
launch and
yeah.
Mercury's right there with the sun and Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also back to Mars and Taurus at 3 degrees. It's almost, I mean, that seems so on point for starting the initiation of a fragrance line and having the courage. I've been reading, like I was saying earlier, the Liz Green, Howard Sass, I don't know how to say his name, Sasporta's book on the inner planets, and doing deep dives into Mars, Mercury, and Venus. And Mars is all about courage, the light side of Mars, that initiatory energy, but also having the courage to follow through with what we're being drawn to,
Mm.
spiritually, materially as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I also kind of like, I know we, when we first glanced at this just like, moments ago, we had a little discussion on the degrees and how there's a variety of ways of interpreting them. In my notebook that I've like filled with things for, oh, I don't even know how long. 3 degrees is a Gemini degree. So, I mean, it could be a variety of different degrees and different thoughts, but I actually really love that we have Mars, which, we have a Mars perfume in a Venusian sign with a Gemini degree, and we launched
Yeah,
with Miss Mercury.
true.
So,
Oh my
That's a
gosh,
really
that's
good
so
point.
true.
and it
And
just
we're
also is so on point, exactly like you said, Coco,
yeah,
given what we're doing and intending.
yeah, and we're ruled by Mars in traditional astrology because we're a Scorpio rising. Um, and so that would be in traditional astrology our chart ruler, which is fitting. But in modern astrology, it would be Pluto, which is forming a square, which is fascinating.
And I also don't mind that either.
Yeah, it adds
The
some
like
like,
goddess of the underworld being our chart rulers, not such a
yeah,
bad thing.
yeah, it's sick. I mean, we're all very, we talked about in the last episode, we're all very, um, like under like shadow associated individuals, I feel. It seems, I don't know if you guys relate to that as
Yeah.
well,
What do
but
you mean? What
Hmm.
do you mean? An undershadow? What was that again? Say
I
that
was
again.
gonna say underworld, but then I said we're all like shadow associated individuals, it seems like relate. I mean, you and I are ruled by the sun, Coco, but I feel like okay, I guess I can't speak for all of you. I'm just saying this because I relate to both of you, and I feel that I identify with like shadow aspects and the underworld, and I tend most of my work tends to deal with like hidden or shadow subjects or occult subjects or taboo subjects or things that are not typically talked about or are hidden away.
Out of
Absolutely.
curiosity, Jenna, I can't remember. Were you born during the day or at night? Is yours a day chart or a night chart?
I'm a night chart.
Mine too.
Ah,
So that
Sick.
makes sense that the shadows are what we, relate to more, even though the
Yes.
sun rules the chart.
yeah. I am technically a night chart as well. I was in the black hour before dawn.
Yes. Sick. Okay, cool. And I also have my sun conjunct Pluto, so I always feel especially, and Lilith on my ascendant, just like we have here. So that makes sense. Um, and the other thing that I think is really sweet is this Venus, Jupiter. They're not conjunct, but they're both in Cancer in the ninth house. And it does just feel very like communal. It brought so many people together. It was such a wonderfully sweet and like abundant feeling night. And it's in the ninth house, which rules astrology and like higher wisdom and higher
That's
learning.
awesome. It's yeah, and it feels just. I mean, well, Venus in Cancer, but with Jupiter there, it just feels very like your two supportive parents. Like there's
Yeah.
this kind of
Yeah.
vibe that, and also they're in kind of speaking of like occult and such things. There's that like containment happening that's also highly like nebulous and conceptual, right? Like Jupiter can like rule boundaries, like it's terminus is one of his Jupiter's names. And then Venus, we've talked about how the like cell wall or the cell membrane and the containment of life is Venusian, and like the magic circle that like creates. And so it's like very interesting for it to be there in the ninth house, and then for them to be like kind of together in that way.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that.
It's like, the perfume cloud. I mean, literally the gaseous giant. And
There seems to be like a
so,
lot of like nurturing and healing energy as
yeah,
well.
at the same time, protective and, yeah, for sure. Like, it's like,
Yeah, because Venus and Jupiter are both in Cancer, and then also the Mars Chiron loose conjunction down, in the sixth and seventh house, kind of like, and Chiron moving out of um, Aries and into Taurus hopefully soon, and Mars being right there. It's kind of when we first talked about this fragrance line, I had never thought of sensuality in the sense of like smelling and being able to inhale and have that evoke archetypes in me, but it happens all the time. And I never thought, I mean, when you smell smoke at a campfire, or when you smell, you know,
Mhm.
tortillas on the stove, like I think of my grandmother. And so like all these, it's where when we inhale, we're always imagining these archetypes or evoking these archetypes. And so we're actually like materializing that and saying, hey, everybody, look,
Yeah.
yeah,
we experience on a daily basis, but you can also use the archetypes. So
Hmm.
they look like little seeds too, like little things coming out of the horizon, like just
Yeah.
that combination of the glyphs,
Uh,
the like double horned moon coming into like the soul crowned by the moon of Taurus, and
yeah.
then like you've got the key and this
Yeah.
like literal
Totally.
seed, sprouting seed, like
Yep. Yeah, it's the image of the sprout. That is true. Cool.
I love
yeah,
that.
for
Okay.
real.
And then
There's do you okay when we like have think lots to talk about, but I'm curious. Do you know how like sometimes the parents end up in their children's charts? Do you like see yourself
there
anywhere?
we I love that. I
Leo moon.
for who? Coco?
Well, I mean, we're both Leo rising,
Yeah.
and so like, I,
Mothers, the mothers.
Hmm.
exactly.
That's hilarious. Totally. And then Mauricio, you could be the Taurus Mars.
Well, actually, I have my Mercury's in Gemini at a 16 degrees,
True.
and I share a south and north node with this fragrance line.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
You have so much actually in this chart. There's a lot of Mauricio in this chart, which makes sense because you are like the hands-on creator of these fragrances. I feel like I
Cool.
also, I mean, I have my Saturn and my moon is in Aries and my Venus is in Libra at 28 degrees. So my Venus is opposing this Chiron Mars conjunction. And then my sun is at 0 degrees Sag down here opposing this. And my Pluto's at 2 degrees Sag opposing the sun. And my Mercury's at
Yeah.
11 degrees Sagittarius. So there's, yeah, I see that in there too.
Yeah, my stellium, I have a Mars, Neptune, North Node, Sun, Mercury, and kind of sort of Venus, because Venus is in Capricorn,
Mm-hmm.
stellium in my chart, opposing um, uh,
These.
Gemini in my
Whoa.
11th house, which is where my lot of fortune actually is. I don't have
Yes.
anything in Gemini except for my lot of fortune and my
Whoa.
so
So cool.
That's very
yeah.
cool. There's like
Makes a lot of
these
sense.
like not not necessarily like reflections, but like I don't know, like the conjuration of like the that which is within or like beneath or below.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hey, what we I mean, in the fifth house for us, it's it's the house of creation and creativity, and so we're like doing a lot under the radar, under the horizon to put it out into the
Mm-hmm.
world, and then
Yep.
Venus rules both our 10th house and Taurus, which I don't
Mhm.
have anything in my 10th house, but I'm learning more and more about um 10th house, or houses that are empty being just full of potential.
Yeah. Yeah. My midheaven is at 0 degrees Taurus. So it's right there. And I actually just remembered my Mars is at 12 degrees Virgo. So right on the midheaven.
Oh, cool. Wow, that's
Oh, and
cool.
and Jenna, you were asking about that one time about Mars in Virgo, and one of the things that I'm learning is, like I was saying before about Mars having courage, and this particular, especially being in the second house, is you having courage to put your finances on the line for what you want to create.
Real.
Wow.
That's funny. Always have that courage, not shy about being broke for what I want. That's funny. Well, okay, that was fun. Shall we get into it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's begin by talking about Mars.
Mars.
We all have our
We need to
fragrance.
have the stickers on the back,
Oh
unfortunately.
yeah.
I need to get those.
Oh yeah,
Wait, are they
sad.
reflected? Imagine mine's reflected.
Perfect.
I'm gonna send it to them
Yes, she's anointing.
Yeah,
as
yes.
we speak of it. Okay, so Mars is the planet we all know and love. Astronomically, it is known as the red planet because of the iron minerals in its soil that oxidize. It's cold, funny enough. It's a desert world, and it's believed that it may have a history that at one time mirrored Earth in some way. Um, a day on Mars lasts about 24 hours and 37 minutes, so almost the same time um, around the sun as Earth, or not around the sun. In its orbital rotation, one full rotation is about 24 Earth hours. But because it's further away from the sun a year, its total time to rotate around the sun is about 687 days. It has very extreme seasons because it has a tilt of about 25 degrees. So it does have 4 seasons, but it just has really, really hot summers, really, really cold winters. very thin air, and it is 95% carbon dioxide. These are just some fun facts about the astronomy of Mars. I think it's fun to see where there are similarities in the astrology and astronomy. Mars has blue sunsets, which I think
Oh,
is cool.
Wow.
It is usually a pinkish red sky because of the dust, but at sunset and at dusk, sunsets appear blue. It
wow.
has some of the largest dust storms in the solar system, which can blanket the entire planet for months on end. And it has a sorry, it has a really tall mountain. It has Olympus Mons, which is the solar system's largest volcano, and it's 3 times taller than Mount Everest. It's about the
That's
size
sick.
of the entire state of Arizona. Um,
Wow.
Whoa.
That
yeah,
sounds very Martian.
yeah.
Yeah, for
It
real.
has
That's
the
pretty
the big
wild. Like Mount Doom, just Mount Doom casually floating on the.
huh, huh. And it has 2 small potato-shaped moons called Phobos and Deimos, which mean in Greek, I think Greek. That sounds like Greek, right?
Yeah,
Or
I
is
remember
that
from
Latin?
Sailor Moon, Sailor Mars had birds named after them.
That's funny. Phobos, Phobos means fear, and Deimos means panic.
How
Uh,
fun.
Interesting.
yeah,
Wait, were those the creatures in Hercules? Let's not get into that. Sorry.
that's
Isn't
funny.
that their names? I don't know.
Phobos and Deimos, maybe. I'll have to rewatch it.
You, yeah, homework.
That's funny. Um, all right. So those are astronomy facts about Mars. Shall we talk about the archetype of Mars?
Yeah.
Yes.
Coco, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Mars, what I was saying earlier is our courage, but it's the part of us that is willing to fight for who we are. Mars is also about action, aggression, instinct, desire, conflict, heat, fire, knives, but it's our drive. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. Um, and it's I kind of also think of Mars as the archetype that helps to separate us from mom. The moment we decide to become our own individuals, I feel like the energy is very raw, instinctual. Um, and I didn't know this, but the uh, Aries, not Aries, Aries, but Aries, which was one of the I don't know, Greek
The Greek
is
personification of Mars.
yeah, and he was not he didn't have a father, which I thought was really interesting. Did you guys know
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it was a very interesting theme in Greek mythology because like there was like paternity was such a big deal for like not an early patriarchal culture, but like, for us, I suppose an early patriarchal culture. And the like parenthood, the like gods not having parents is very frequently because they were or having weird birth stories like Aphrodite or like Athena popping out of Zeus's head
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
turning Medusa into a monster, whereas like a lot of current historians and mythologists are actually looking at how Athena like stole all of Medusa's powers and authorities and all of those things. So like, that's all again another conversation. But
Interesting.
anyway, usually it meant that they're like older than that pantheon.
Interesting. Cool. I didn't know that. It's
So
also
yeah,
interesting.
sorry, just me throwing a
No,
wrench
that's I
That's
no,
what
I
we're
like
love
I
here.
like to do.
That's what
no,
we're here for.
I want all of these. I want to talk about all of the mythology that comes up with it, all of the associations. I think just like having a big picture of what we're talking about when we talk about Mars, just coming from the three of us and like our backgrounds and our connection to each of these. Yeah, because I would also associate Athena with Mars. And so I think it's interesting that Aries isn't supposed to have a father and Athena doesn't have a mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whenever I think of Mars in my own chart, it's where I react without thinking. And so, like one of the when I was reading about Mars, one of the weak points in Mars is that we can, fight battles that are in front of us, but we don't have any control of what's going on behind us,
Mm.
which makes perfect sense because Mars is so instinctual and so, kind of, Mars rules Aries, the ram, right? So forward movement and leaving everything behind us vulnerable, which
Yeah,
makes sense because when you think of Mars too, you think of reacting
yeah,
quickly and without thinking, with a lack of the Mercury or mercurial archetype, you can get yourself into some trouble.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. I think of Mars as like pure instinct and impulse. It's like that initial spark of creation. It's like Coco was saying, that motivation, the thing that like gets us up and moving. And in alchemy, it is represented by the individuation stage. So with Venus, we'll get into later, you get the conjunction, and then in Mars is the separation. And it's what you were saying too, but like separating from the parents, like that moment of like, no, this is who I am, here I am, world. um, completely completely controlled by their instincts. And I think this is important to understand when we think of the signs that Mars rules over: Aries and Scorpio. um, Scorpio is sometimes seen as like the more feminine expression of Mars, and Aries being the more masculine expression, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
Um, but I
It's
like to think
interesting.
of it that way. I like to think of it as like maybe the celestial or the like lighter expression versus the darker shadow expression. What were you gonna say, Coco?
Oh, it's just interesting to me that Mars, ruled Scorpio, in ancient astrology because Scorpio is so like undercover. But I guess also when they strike, you'll feel it.
Yeah,
I think like
go ahead.
Amazon scorpionic like underworld energies, like pre before, it's worth thinking about again, referring to these mythologies. Our references are very Hellenistic, right? But thinking about before the sword was removed from Aphrodite and Persephone's hands, or the scythe that ended or ends life. And Scorpio, I think, is also kind of interesting to think about in terms of like a protective warrior. Like I'm I mean, my Scorpio is a descendant. I have a Scorpio sister, and I'm close to Scorpio. So, like, warrior woman is like, yeah, well, yeah, it's the Scorpio, like to me anyway.
Yeah,
And the like guardian of the underworld, the guardian of the souls that are like resting and restoring themselves and bringing
yeah,
nourishment to the land, is also kind of like cool to think about. And one of the points that I was trying to get to was like before, in terms of the constellations, the scales of Libra were the claws of Scorpio. Scorpio was a much larger goddess constellation.
mm,
And so if you think of like scorpionic martial justice, like, the, we just mentioned how the glyph of Mars looks like a sprouting seed, but it's also, the shield and the spear. And like, those are aggressive weapons, but they're also protective, right? It's not just the blade when conceptualize the blade versus the chalice. A spear is different. It's a little different. It's like can be used to like procure food or whatever. And so it's yeah. I mean, it's kind of fun to have these conversations because they're Mars in like a modern sense. I've been thinking a lot about this, or I've thought a lot about it while creating these fragrances over the past year. And it's like kind of like what is it that we're trying to like bring forth, conjure forth from the archetypal realm. And I was really thinking of like healthy expressions of these archetypes and energies. And like, you know, we see how an obsession with separating yourself from your mom, from the mother, and using violence to do so, what that does, especially over the course of thousands of years, like we're living in the culmination of such things, of such a way of existing, you know, and even those of us that, you know, don't want to exist in that way are forced to just through the way, you know, through the systems that we have to utilize in order to just like live even passively. And it's like we still need Mars. We still, the warriors that, you know, are currently, right, you know, if anyone's paying attention to social media or news or alternative news sources right now, or even, you know, primary news sources, even though there are popular ones, even though they're obviously, anyway, we won't get into that. You're seeing that there are people, warriors, standing up for people wrongfully detained, people, and, you know, being ethnically cleansed from this land by ICE and these federal agents and put into these concentration camps. Like, you know, like the United States has concentration camps right now. Like there's no denying that. And so that, and not looking away from that is martial, right? Like it's not pretending that that isn't reality is not very Mars. And I don't know if it's very celestial in general, but yeah, anyway, that feels like, it feels like Mars energy is what we need right now, but at the same time, in these more like healthful, healthy, restorative archetypes, like you guys are describing, like, you know, healthy channels of anger, or, you know, even acknowledging that you have anger. Denying anger can be super toxic. So, you know.
Yes, that is one of the shadow aspects. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think that is like a really good explanation for also Mars ruling over Scorpio, because it does like boldly look at what nobody's looking at, and it says, no, it's right there, I see it, and like you're not going to convince, you're not going to convince me that it's there. And also Scorpio is just so intensely focused. Like when Scorpio wants to do something, it's tunnel vision. This is what we're doing, and like nobody can convince me otherwise. It's also the sexual, it's the sign of sex, and Mars is all about sex and lust and desire, and I think that is the side of Scorpio that Mars kind of rules over. But also, and Aries is just, to me, the Aries side of Mars is like the one that's like loud and in your face and gonna start a fight about it and gonna be like cocky and confident and like, I'm the best, I have the biggest volcano in the solar system.
Because it does.
That. Yeah, my you know, Chris is in Aries, and he's got several planets in Aries in the 7th house, and he is like a world. I mean, you both, Mauricio, you got to meet him. Jenna, you know him. He's just a whirlwind of constant energy, you know. But yeah, you know, what's interesting is like I've never seen him angry before, but I can feel that it's right there. If anybody ever hurt me or you guys or our animals, he would, you know, come to our rescue. But so like, yeah, I feel like sometimes Mars gets a little bit of a bad rap. But like you were saying, Mauricio, I think you said it too, Jenna, we need Mars. We need that energy. If we didn't have that energy, we wouldn't get up. We wouldn't be inspired to take bold actions or have courage especially when we need it.
Yeah. As an Aries moon, I agree that Mars gets a bad rep, and I think that we're underappreciated. Just kidding. Aries is plenty appreciated. I want to read a little bit just from Cosmos and Psyche, what Richard Tarnas writes about Mars, just because I think he has like small blurbs that encapsulate the planet, the archetypes pretty well. He says Mars is the principle of energetic force. It is the impulse and the capacity to assert, to act, and to move energetically and forcefully, to have an impact, to press forward and against, to defend and offend, what you were saying, Mauricio. It is the tendency to experience aggressiveness, anger, violence, forceful physical energy to be combative, competitive, courageous, and vigorous. The god of war. Classic.
Yeah, you guys brought up alchemy earlier too, and in the Inner Planets book by Green and okay, I have to say this, Sasportas, I think is how you pronounce his last name. The wolf is associated with um, alchemy, sulfur, and the wolf. And the reason for that, I guess, is because the association with the wolf being the lone fighter.
It's associated with Mars.
Yeah. So the lone fighter, so the alchemy that is associated with Mars is associated with the wolf. Yeah, and
cool.
Yeah, like the Wolf King, and the maturation of all of the archetypes, like we talk about how there's shadow aspects and light aspects, the turning the aggression into turning that raw primal energy into courage and integrity and discipline and protection, like you were saying, Mauricio, and leadership. Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds like alchemy that could be very useful in this time. And
yeah,
so we made a perfume.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Perfume. I forgot that I wanted to mention just the fun facts of Mars ruling over Tuesdays. Mars rules over Tuesdays, and associated with colors like red and iron, rust, and associated. I would associate Mars with the number 1. Do you guys have other Martian numbers that you would associate?
I would say 1 as well. Yeah. Just because whenever I think of Mars, I just think of initiation. Like I think of striking a match and that first spark, or I think of when you the first light a firecracker, or when the firework first goes off. So definitely 1.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Mars feels very 1 to me. I guess 1. There's something particularly sharp about 3 that I don't know, kind of I like maybe 3 as well, but at the same time 3 has all these other land, sea, sky, so that's maybe a little too harmonious for Mars. So
and triangles too, which is not Mars.
Yeah.
Energy.
I mean, it is the glyph of the fire, right? So maybe that's probably why I'm thinking of 3.
I think
yeah.
In the alchemical processes, in the 7 alchemical steps, Mars is the 4th, which is kind of interesting. Comes after Venus, which is the 3rd. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the fragrance and how we came to have this beautiful fragrance. Which I think is, I always go back and forth on my favorites, but I think I always come back to Mars as my favorite out of the 3 because it's so unique, and maybe it's my Aries moon, but it's just there's something so, it's unsettling, but in a way that is so comforting to me. And it's so interesting and exciting to smell. Every time I smell it, it ignites something within me, which is exactly Martian.
It reminds me of a motorcycle ride, being on a motorcycle and smelling the smells when you're on a motorcycle, which I don't, think people should get on motorcycles because they're super dangerous, but it's
but
it's
Coco's
exciting.
Been on one and her heart's pounded in a memorable way. Very Mars.
Yes. Yeah.
I totally see you on a motorcycle.
Totally, of course. Of course. When we sat down to talk about the fragrances for the first time and we were going through the archetypes with Mauricio, I remember saying, I want Mars to smell like blood and sex and death, but not like death, just fighting to the death. And I think, like bright and energetic and exciting. Coco, do you remember what you mentioned with it?
I think if I remember correctly, I was talking about fire and the smell of fire and this I mean it doesn't smell like gasoline. Like there's no gasoline smell in it, but that is another thing that I think of when I think of Aries, is something that ignites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you guys
something
mentioned
that
like smoke
wakes us up.
notes.
Yeah. Yeah, smoke notes, and then Mauricio ended up doing. I'll pass it over to you, Mauricio, to talk about it. But I just think the molten spark accord. When you sent me that for the first time, I was freaking out because it could not be more perfect for Mars, and I feel like that's the to me that's what comes through the most in the Mars fragrance is the molten spark accord. It just like makes you think of like flint being struck.
Yeah, and I think of Flint, associate Flint as very martial. And
Yeah,
like, yeah, when we were talking about Mars and creating Mars, you guys mentioned like the smoke notes and like the brightness and this a desire for something that's a little more industrial or raw or like, like blood or metal or something hot or sparking, literally, not sparkling. And I was like, like I kind of have some ideas, and in a very kind of like me fashion, I was like, there are a few plant things that plants make that kind of smell weirdly metallic. And so like I was one of the things that pinged in my mind when you were talking about the like geological aspects of Mars was its like high oxide content. And one of the primary components of our hot metal accord is a molecule produced by roses called rose oxide, as well as a very like metallic and like dry fruit or dry peel smelling citrus molecule, and a an aldehyde, of actually a very classic aldehyde, not even a new one, that in low doses, imparts sparkle and freshness, and is one of the kind of iconic components of Chanel number five. But in a high dose, it smells metallic and starts to smell kind of weirdly warm. And we combine that with a metallic musk or a musk that similarly at high doses begins to smell metallic. And so we built ourselves this like hot metal accord, or this warm spark hot metal accord, that when it like clicked together, in that kind of way that perfumes that you aim for, like you're kind of playing at it and you're like, I think this could do this, I think this could do this, and it should work in my mind. And then it eventually you get it to where you want it to be, and yeah, it just like clicked, and I was like, whoa, I think this is what they were interested in. And
yeah,
then it just was a matter of building it out with some of the other materials. Like we really liked blood orange, we liked citrus in terms of like this kind of like activating energy. Citruses are frequently associated with the sun, right? And I mean, all of the planets and ourselves, we get our energy from the sun, so there's no, it's not like there's any conflict in incorporating a citrus. And then the blood orange has those like anthocyanins, I believe is what they are, the antioxidant compounds that produce that like dark blood, like pulp
mm,
color that's super cool in blood oranges. And it like smells like that color to me. Along, we
yeah,
included, in order to kind of get some of that bright red color, talking about grounding and maturizing, or having a more mature expression of martial energy. I used a ginger carbon dioxide extraction and carrot seed absolute to not only impart some of that like bright orange energy, but also some like grounding, because they're roots, they ground, and in scent we can work, and obviously magically we can work with them to conjure forth those properties. And then I feel like it kind of really put itself together when we introduced the real wool absolute. That's a fairly new material by a company called Biolands. That's a real extraction, a real solvent extraction of wool. Obviously, this we've unfortunately bred sheep to have their wool sheared, and so it's not actually humane anymore to like let them overgrow and like whatever, we screwed them over in that way. But anyway, we need to do something with the wool, and we can make fragrance material out of it. And it's very frequently actually a byproduct of the wool industry. So it's like it doesn't have to be perfect sweater or scarf wool. It can be other wool, and so it will extract from it, or they figured out how to extract from it, and we get this really crazy smelling absolute that's like bright orange red. A lot of the materials that we used for Mars were definitely like orange and red. They just by their nature, the extracts, and it has a totally animalic, oily smell that like really comes through pretty beautifully on skin. It's kind of how the scent changes according to from person to person. All fragrances do interact with your immune system and the acid mantle on your skin, but Mars in particular seems to really enjoy shifting on people. And it's that wool absolute, that kind of oily, musky quality. But there's also a really bright fruitiness to it that really just completes the little Ouroboros with that bright blood orange in the top, which is really fun.
Yeah. It's so incredible. It's one of the most wild things that I have smelled, and I just love it so much. I can't wait for more people to smell it. I really think Mars is going to have its own little cult following, because it's not for the masses. It is certainly
No.
not like if you just want like a floral, fragrant, it's not a commercial perfume, and it never would be. Mars would never want to be digestible
No,
to
I can't see Mars at Target or at me.
None of these at Target, honestly, of course. But Mars is just like, it's so special to me. It's so unique. And I think it smells incredible.
One of the girls that I worked with that I introduced you to, Jenna, remember at Alchemy, and she said she used to be in perfume. When she smelled all of them, she said Mars was her favorite. And I was shocked because everybody says Venus or Mercury, but she was like, I think Mars is my favorite. And I think it's because she knows, understands.
The perfume people that have, smelled it, even blind, right? Like I didn't tell them what it was. I was like, what do you think of this? And they're into it. So just because it doesn't, I mean, I don't care about, or not that I don't care about making unique things, but I'm not particularly interested in comparing my work to other people's work. Aquarius, Mars, I guess, I don't know. But I haven't really smelled much that smells like Mars, so hopefully people will enjoy the like unique experience.
Yeah, yeah. It's an if you know fragrance,
Yeah,
and if
which I like.
you smell Mars, you can join my club of being I'll be the Mars fan club president. My favorite notes in it are, well, my favorite notes just in theory, but also that I can smell, are the wool absolute, the fresh cut grass molecule that I always forget the name.
So those are totally fresh cut grass molecules. They are literally what grass. So I guess it's the element of violence in the perfume. Well, I guess perfume making is destructive. You extract from plants, life from death, creation from whatever. It's all necromancy, I guess. That's a whole that we could talk about that. That'd be interesting. Perfume as necromancy, because we use dead things to make it. But Mars. What was that?
Scorpio rising.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. See, we must acknowledge her realities. She's not going to let us deny. Good for her. The molecule, or so when we cut grass, like we slice it with scissors or a lawnmower or a scythe or what have you, they release molecules that to us smell like fresh cut grass, and they're meant to like give like herbivores stomach aches and kind of warn other plants that there's like something fucking plants up in the neighborhood, and like ward away bugs. And so there's all these different ways that grasses and plants use these molecules defensively and for communication with each other and other species. but they're two of their names. One is hexanol, and another is cis-3 hexanol. And so we utilize those, raw molecules in Mars to just bring forth that bright edge. So by contrasting these like pretty sharp, like they smell sharp, they smell very green, um, molecules with the like bright juiciness of the blood orange, and then the like darker smokiness of the real cade that we use, and the wool, and the nagamatha that's also in there, these real essential oils. It like kind of manages to like line the edges of the sun. It's like almost like adding like an outline to text, referring to my past life as a graphic designer. The grass molecules, and then they refer to the equinox and the fact that Aries is the first sign, and that's when the spring grass is growing. So there's multiple nuances and energetic layers. We're also kind of drawing on that like alertness too, that the plants,
Yeah.
how they react to these cut grass molecules.
Hmm. There's just so many layers that went into your designing of these fragrances, and every single one is so intentional and so like ritualistic, and just the amount of like heart and thought that went into these is so incredible to hear about every single time.
They were
And it
fun.
really comes through.
We did produce them, and I worked on them largely after work on Tuesdays, the day of Mars, and ideally during the hour of Mars, or on weekends during the hour of Mars.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then your actual like batching of them, you always have this.
Oh
I don't know
yes,
if
I
you
always have the
at all.
ultralight and specific spirits, offerings to specific spirits depending on what it is, and music. I think I was telling you guys that like Mars was like a lot of Ashnico, which I guess kind of actually really makes sense, especially if you think of the Scorpio. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I also love, I know it's time to move on, but the other note that I like that when I had to look it up because I hadn't heard of it before, but rock rose,
Oh yeah, that's really it is a very important component of
so Martian.
yeah, it is, and in its way kind of solar but patriarchal leader. um I think I can talk to you guys a little bit about this a little bit while ago. We mentioned wanting to talk about it today, so thank you for reminding me.
Hmm.
But rock rose, also called cistus or labdanum, is also one of its other names. It is a really beautiful shrub that has like rose-like flowers. They don't look exactly like roses, but they are 5 petals, and they have these really cute little spots that are combinations of like white and red or yellow. And the flowers are very frequently either all white or sometimes they're pink. But they grow in the mountains of like really kind of a range. They grow in Spain and North Africa and various other parts of that areas in that part of the world that are really like rocky and dry, and that goats like to go up to and browse and do what goats do, hang out with Pan or whoever. And they would come back highly fragrant, smelling super beautifully. And they realized it was because they were like rubbing up on these bushes. And the resin from the rock rose, because they grow on rocks and they look like roses, was so precious that shepherds used to comb it out of the fur of their livestock and like sell it to like priests or incense traders for, and they would sell it to priests or incense makers or perfumers later on. But it was so precious that the crook of Osiris, that's like that he's like holding that like on the pyramids, and that the pharaohs very frequently seen wielding. I like I'm not sure what I thought it was for before. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I do know. I thought it was for like taking like the mummification process. We'll just leave it at that. But it turns out that it is for combing. It could potentially have been for, we'll say, combing labdanum out of sheep's wool. And
Wow.
so we also kind of tied in this like very solar energetic royal pharaoh royalty in this subtle way through.
Yeah.
I kind of like that reference to be like, you know, pre-patriarchal, pre-civilization associations with these like precious substances, which, you know,
Yeah.
people probably were like, these goats are coming down with gifts from the gods, and like they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that rock rose, like they're determined to grow in like impossible climates, and through the stone they
Yeah,
persist.
absolutely.
Feels very.
And so, you know, by anointing yourself with these essences, you know, either singularly or in blends, we are not only inviting those energies to like surround us, because like we frequently think of like kind of like, you know, this Western dichotomy of inside outside, but
Mhm.
anointment is like can be total metamorphosis and transformation, and alchemization. So, you know, anointment can be, you know, really, or is, if you so intend it to be, deeply transformative and
Yeah.
shifting
So
Yeah.
or
how then,
momentary.
yeah, so before we move on from Mars, should we talk about how we can use the fragrance of Mars, or how you guys have been using the fragrance of Mars? I know for me, I like to wear it if I just need like extra confidence in the day, or if I just want to feel really like into myself or bold. Um, I, yeah, I will sometimes wear Mars if I'm performing. It depends on like how I'm feeling that day. Like in my band, if we have a performance, sometimes I'll wear Venus, but sometimes I'll wear Mars, depending on the energy that I want to bring. If I want to be more like, yeah, this is who I am, versus like an enchantress. Um, yeah, I don't know. What about you guys?
When Chris puts it on in the morning, he says, "I'm wearing Mars because it's all about business today."
Ah, that's cool.
And I'll wear it when I need energy, honestly, when
Mm.
I'm just feeling super tired and I need or if there's something that I don't want to do, if there's somewhere that I do not want to go that I have to go to on a regular basis, I spray that before I go, and then it's like it gives me that extra push to keep moving. And also, if I know that I'm going to have to get into a discussion with someone where it's not going to be a comfortable discussion, to I don't know, it feels powerful, which that's, Scorpio. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really similarly, I'm really, when I need a little bit of energy, my Taurian self's feeling a little, you know, sleepy. Mars is just a really great boost. For me, what I get really strongly is that like juicy orange and those citrus rosy molecules that just totally really wake me up and give me a little zing of energy. Um, People who have like followed my work through Herbcraft are familiar with this, but and know that I am a total proponent of using fragrance magically. Obviously, personal anointment and wearing and transformation is also like, you know, really a a really huge and important and integral component of this work and these fragrances or these perfumes. But I feel like this is a good opportunity to share some of the like trips or tips that I guess I have offered over the years when working with fragrance in like a slightly different way. One that's still anointment but is a little more intentional and focused is anointing your hands. I recommend, you know, just a really light spray, or you could even spray it in the air and like kind of like run your hands through it. But for Mars, something that's like creative or action oriented or is going to require strength, really just as Coco was describing, but maybe in a little more physical sense, than like my anointing your hands, which is, you know, how we manipulate the physical world. And, you know, obviously there's other ways as well. One of the primary ways, you kind of are introducing that martial energy into what it is that you're doing. Or you can anoint tools, or I mean, for me, Mars is a really powerful, would be a really powerful fragrance to use for like protective magic or spells, either anointing objects that you give to people, or, you know, carving glyphs or runes into your fence. And you can totally use Mars. And like Mars also is like, you know, the thorn of the rose, which is one of the reasons that I love that, like those rose molecules in Mars so much. And like we're not, here for lessons on like malevolent magic or anything like that, but Mars is also frequently an ally when using more aggressive magical techniques. We'll just say that.
So,
Yeah.
we'll
I
say,
honestly like to layer them too sometimes, I mean, I'll just say sometimes I layer Mars and Venus, and you can all
Cool.
imagine what that does.
You know what's funny is that
yeah.
I've heard that really frequently, which is like layering is totally like a thing, but really specifically people have been like, I kind of like them all together, or I like them in these pairs, and I'm like, sick, that's cool. I mean, we have all of these energies in us, and these are ways of like, even balancing energy. Like I have my Aries is in the 12th house, so like my fire is like she can be sleepy, and so there's like, yeah, just having that balancing quality of fragrances, or counterbalancing even, is I think also helpful, or can be helpful to
Yeah.
acknowledge.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is so fun. So fun to talk about. Yeah, yeah. I just love that these are like fine fragrances that you can wear like just like your favorite fragrances on your shelf, but you can also use them as ritualistically as you want. You can keep them on your altar. You can wear Mars on Tuesday. You can anoint your hands with it or your tools with it. You can have it as an offering. Like you can get as witchy with it as you want, or they can just be fragrances on your shelf, and that's so sick. Um, okay. Shall we close the Mars chapter and move on to Venus?
Yeah.
Yes, sounds
Thank you,
great.
Mars.